Chapter 2 Teri Hava kitni hai? That was the first question I got asked as I entered the hallowed portals of IIT Delhi. Having made up my mind to pursue engineering, I was finally at the mecca of all aspiring engineers. For all my academic rigor and a fairly decent rank at JEE, my mind drew a complete blank at this question I was asked. For the life of me, I couldn't understand how I was expected to quantify how much air, Hawa, belonged to me. To make matters worse, I was staring at rather scary faces. The big beards and that intimidating look in the eyes of those seniors were enough to have anyone reconsider their IIT dream. The seniors had only one agenda: to do unto others as they have been done unto them, namely to rag the juniors, until perhaps they took pity on my plea and reframed the question as, what was your all India rank, air or Hawa as they call it. I had been told all along that once you cleared JEE, life was set. But here, on day one itself, people were hell-bent on making my IIT dream into a nightmare. To make it to this dream destination, of course, involved a lot of rigorous work and sacrifices. I had joined refugee classes that were known to churn out a number of IITians and had spent 2 extremely hectic years there. Each day after school, I would barely finish my lunch when my mom would already be calling out to rush, as she would drop me to the coaching center. On the way back, I would just to catch the infamous DTC bus, route number 503, which would drop me home to Malviya Nagar. Besides the many hacks that Fiji taught me in order to crack the coveted joint entrance exam, what I also witnessed there at first hand was the innate strength of a branch of a guava tree, or amrud ki tanhi, as it was popularly referred to. That was a pivotal tool that the maths teacher used with all his might to drive home some important lessons. He would refer us as Budde ke khet wale bandar, cornfield monkeys. Legend had it that monkeys would often raid cornfield in villages. The first time the monkey would pull out a corn, he would keep it under his armpit. Then he would pull out another corn and do the same, dropping the first corn in the process. At the end of the raid, you would have a devastated cornfield while the monkeys would still be going back with only one corn. That, to the maths teacher, was representative of how we studied. Conveniently, sieving out of memory the previous lesson learnt each time a new lesson was taught, and becoming the proverbial Budde ke khet wale bandar in the process. It was no monkey business though to manage to climb my way up to the second batch of the Fiji group, each jump indicative of the probability of getting a good rank at joint entrance exam. Come the actual entrance exam, and it was quite another story, as I thought I had blown my chance with the very first paper. No marks for guessing that the paper under question was mathematics. I remember sitting in the car post the exam and literally weeping while telling my parents that there wasn't a chance that I would make it and that I shouldn't even waste my time attending the remaining exams. It so happened that there was another car in the parking lot whose passenger was also shedding copious tears at her plea. The 2 sets of parents immediately convinced their wards that the maths misery was widespread. As they say, misery loves company. Based on my understanding of this collective suffering, I went on to attempt the other papers. Thankfully so, as the result revealed that my all India rank was 1823. When the result was declared, the atmosphere at home was euphoric. To say the least, I was the only child from my school that year to make it. importantly, our entire refugee colony had got together at our home that evening. Every heart beating with pride at the thought that one of their own was now ready to take on the new world order. The bubble burst quickly when I realized that while my rank 1823 could lead me to an IIT, there wasn't chance of my making it to the much coveted computer science course. Ours was the Millennium batch that had big dreams to study computers and make it to the US of A. To my disappointment, I realized that the best I could hope to get was chemical engineering at IIT Guwahati. If at all I wanted to make it to IIT Delhi, I would have to settle for either civil or textile engineering. My dad had done a lot of audit work with IIT Delhi and knew a couple of professors there. He put me on to one of them, who advised me that making an entry into IIT Delhi would open doors to my future and that I should think beyond the choice of course. It was on this advice that I tore up my already filled form and stated in the new one IIT Delhi, civil engineering, as my first choice, which I went on to pursue. Off-bus routes and traffic lights. To be honest, though apart from these professors' advice, what also led me to IIT Delhi was, believe it or not, the lack of traffic lights between my home at Malviya Nagar and the IIT Delhi campus. It so happened that while I had mentioned civil engineering at IIT Delhi as my preferred choice, pulled by the appeal of electronics course, I decided to go for the orientation at Delhi College of Engineering, DCE, another coveted institute that I had made it to. A dear friend, Shubhank Shankar, who had also set his eyes on IIT but got convinced to explore the course at DCE, accompanied me. Truth be told, once you have witnessed the imposing IIT campus, no other campus even comes close. Nonetheless, we made our ways to attend the orientation at DCE. While we were being told the many nuances of the courses, Shankar had an urgent question to ask the panel at DCE. While several pairs of serious-looking eyes turned to him, expecting that his question would lead them to further enlightenment, his question filled that tense DCE hall with a nervous giggle. Which bus route would I need to take to get to DCE? Went his earnest query. While many thought he was asking an inane question and even being disrespectful, for him the question was anything but that. It was actually his question that led to a shift within me and made me realize that there was a lot of merit in the fact that I lived next door to IIT Delhi, and behold, there also wasn't a single traffic light between my house at Malviya Nagar and the institute. That helped me make the decision, one that I have never regretted. It was actually this proximity to home that later enabled my IIT journey as a day scholar, as opposed being a hosteler, which, among other things, saved me from some rather gruesome ragging episodes that many of my batchmates were subjected to. In fact, a very good friend of mine from Fiji, Ashutosh Mathur, had made it to the chemical engineering program and was a hosteler. At one point, he was ready to get back home on account of the ragging, and that was really awful. At alumni meet, even today, the common refrain of all hosteler is "Bahut fatti thi," referring the ragging they were subjected to. The two are rank holders. When you are being pushed to give IIT preparation your best shot, the general idea is that once you have cracked JEE, you don't have to worry too much about your future. Nothing could be further from the truth. Having been fed liberally on this advice, of course, I decided to take life a little easy, with the net result that I landed up with an SGPA of 7.3 in the first semester. Shankar, the guy who wanted to understand DC orientation, knew better and managed an SGPA of above 9. The fact that his stream changed on account of that from civil to mechanical came as a big blow to me. So much so that I like to think this event paved the way for my future at IIT. That and the fact that I was counseled by another day scholar and a dear friend, Parakram Khandpur, who was the sought after computer science course with an AIR of 33. He told me that without hard work, the IIT dream would remain just that, a pipe dream. I had decided that it was time to get back to my hardworking avatar. From the 7.3 SGPA of the first semester, I quickly hit a 9 in the second semester and thereafter never stopped short of 9.5 semester after semester. In fact, the last semester, I even hit a perfect 10 that revered the C. The C in the last semester is actually a rare event, since by then people have either got through campus placements or have their eyes set on joining a master's program. And there is no incentive for getting this high grade. For me though, it was about outdoing myself and proving a point. While I was departmental rank 2 right from the second semester, and when I had consciously decided to turn my futures around, with this perfect score in the last semester, I graduated to department rank 1. But only for a period of 2 hours. It so happened that while the final grades were published and put up on the notice board, the erstwhile departmental rank 1 went crying to the professor saying, "Meri zindagi kharab ho gayi. My life is ruined." While he had worked consistently all along, he had lost out in the final semester. The professor decided to reward his consistency and grant him an additional grade that once again turned him into departmental rank 1. It was a big blow for me, as I missed out on the collates and the medal that would come to the first rank holder despite being 1. This incident has stayed in my mind as a big remarker, as I see this theme recurring in several aspects of my life. I have been a late bloomer for sure. Well, perhaps good things come to those who wait. A rejected visa and redemption. Your visa application has been rejected. The hurt that this one sentence generally still rankles. I was a 10th grader at the time and had applied for a Canadian visa to visit my mama during the summer vacation for myself. Even though the rejection was on a technical ground of not having attached an NOC from my school, it hurt. So much so that while I have traveled to more than 50 countries since, that rejected visa application still haunts me. When IIT presented a chance to redeem this visa rejection by way of an exchange program, I jumped at the offer. To my delight, I cracked the interview that qualified me for this program in France, along with 5 other batchmates. The Institut National des Sciences Appliquées de Lyon, or INSA Lyon, as it was popularly referred to, was to be my home for the next year. Both the institutes as well as the exchange program were much sought after. The cherry on the cake was the fact that you didn't have to pay through your nose. While you paid your regular fees at IIT, the French student involved in exchange would pay his fees in France without being hit by the exchange rate. I was in luck for one other reason. I had figured out that a scholarship of as much as 600 euros a month, which was available for students pursuing their masters in France, was that year open to students pursuing their bachelor's course as well. The dilemma that I faced was that only 2 scholarships were being given out, and if I were to share this information with my other batchmates, my odds of getting the scholarship would become 1 of 6. While the student holding department rank 1 knew of this chance, the 2 of us went to apply for the scholarship and received it. It is another matter that when we landed in France and had to report for the processing of our scholarship, it was mighty awkward to face the other 4 people who were glaring at us for our not having told them of the opportunity. Set at the confluence of the Rhone and Saône rivers, Lyon is the 3rd largest city in France after Paris and Marseille, and is a loving place to be in. The year that I spent in Europe had a count among the high points in my life. We reached Lyon nearly 1.5 months before our classes were to begin, and we used that time to learn French and, of course, to explore Europe on a shoestring. That year spent in France exposed me to an exceptional educational system. In the early days, I was spellbound at the sight of French students attending classes with pencil boxes that had pens of different colors. Their meticulousness could be seen in the fact that they wrote what professor was saying in the class in one color and took down what was written on the board in another color and followed that up with their thoughts about the subject in yet another color. Even when I came back to India, that rigor stayed with me. Importantly, I realized that while the Indian education system took pride in its toppers, the French system took pride in the bottom of their batch. They celebrated the fact that even the lowest in the marks hierarchy understood the basic concept. Besides, spending an academically enriching year, I made the most of the year by traveling the whole Europe and even doing a solo trip to UK. For all IIT smarts and those great SGPAs, we also ended up doing a number of stupid things. In Italy, with a batchmate, I drove a Vespa, releasing the fact that there were no traffic lights, only to realize that we had driven through at least 20 red lights that hung from cables while we were looking for poles. In Switzerland, we casually sauntered into a railway tunnel in Interlaken until we felt some tremor and miraculously jumped off to the side when it came to see a train whoosh past. I also made some lasting friendships in France as a part of the Lyon International program, where you were hosted by a local family. Not only did I visit them nearly every week, so strong was our connection that when I was to travel back to India, the gentleman drove me down from Lyon to Geneva airport, almost 1.5 hours away. No marks for guessing that I had chosen Geneva as my boarding destination because the flight from Geneva was far cheaper. Importantly, a courtesy of scholarship that I had won. When I got back to India, I had saved enough money so that I didn't have to ask my parents for any money for my future education. As a matter of fact, I have been financially independent since 2002. The one thing that the year spent in France did for me was to take away my rose-tinted glasses through which one looked at foreign locations as the pinnacle for all troubles. For all the fun that I had in France, I also experienced the loneliness that staying abroad brings in its way. Particularly in the last 2 months when I pursued my internship in Lyon, while my batchmates had moved to other cities, I experienced a kind of isolation that was draining. Back in India, I was clear that I no longer wanted to go to Stanford or MIT for my masters, as that would mean building my career overseas. On the contrary, I was sure that the discipline and rigor that I had come armed with had to put to use to well CAT exam.